Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate and a special interview with the Finance Minister and Leader of the Lok Sabha, Pranab Mukherjee. Mr. Mukherjee, today as we speak, there's a perception that the government has been boxed into a corner by Anna Hazare. Would you accept that, or do you believe and are you confident that within a reasonable space of time you can find a solution that will end his fast and encourage him to give up his Ram Leela agitation?
We are always trying to find a solution. Even from his threat to agitation, if you recollect the chronology of the events, when he sat at hunger strike in Jantar Mantar in the month of April, government representatives talked to him through his interlocutors, and we agreed to have the joint drafting committee. Joint drafting committee met 9 times, starting from 16th of April to 22nd of June. We discussed the modalities first, then they gave us the basic principles of John Lokpal bill, and it was agreed upon that if we have convergence of views on those basic principles, giving the legal language to draft the legislation would not be the problem. Out of the 40 basic principles which Sri Anna Hazare and his associates, who were members of the committee nominated by him, he nominated 4 members plus himself.
True, sir.
All these are known to you.
Absolutely,
the
this is history.
point which I am trying to drive at, that out of 40, as many as 26 basic principles there were agreement. There were 7 basic principles on which in principle agreement was there, but there was further discussion necessary. There were 7 points on which we had agreement, but it required editorial changes. But after that, again they went back, and in the final meeting, one meeting before the final meeting, they said, no, you give your draft to the Parliament, we will give our draft to the Parliament. It was agreed that we will give their draft to Parliament, I will give, and I told them the entire parliamentary procedure. Therefore, in that background, even after that, he has sat on strike. We are negotiating with him. Government is not in a box, but government is sincerely trying to resolve the issue, and we are having discussions with his representatives. I hope it would be possible to arrive at an agreed solution.
Now, yesterday, in his speech in the Lok Sabha, the Prime Minister proposed a discussion in Parliament on all the different versions of the Lokpal bill that are in the public domain. It was expected that that debate would start today, but it didn't. Will the debate happen tomorrow, Saturday, or is it not going to happen till Monday?
We will try to have it tomorrow, but normally when the members of the Parliament, they decide to sit on Saturday, they decide to sit on Saturday to transact the government business. But that will not stand in the way. We may have debate tomorrow, but the question is that after debate, in this debate, what we are asking, what he wanted us to have, that let the members of the Parliament discuss the basic principles of his John Lokpal bill, the areas of convergence, the areas of divergence, but after that, these discussions will ultimately have to be taken into consideration by the appropriate standing committee while formulating their recommendations to the Lokpal bill, which have been referred to them.
Absolutely. Now, as you know, Minister, today Anna Hazare has sent a letter to the Prime Minister saying that his condition for giving up his fast is that Parliament must pass a resolution accepting in his terms what he calls the 3 sticking points, which are the Lokayuks, the Citizens' Charter and the lower bureaucracy. But the problem is that the majority of the parties in Parliament are not in agreement with his terms for these 3 points. So, how serious a problem do you have?
This is a real serious problem which we are unable to convince the associates of Sri Anna Hazare when we have discussion that Congress party does not have a clear absolute majority of its own. Secondly, a legislation is to be passed by majority members of the parliament. Even the recommendations which will come from the standing committee, there too it will have to be endorsed, all those recommendations by the majority members of the standing committee. Therefore, these are the absolute necessity to get a legislation passed. Therefore, we require the support and cooperation of all political parties. And here you have noticed, after yesterday's Prime Minister's speech, and when Prime Minister requested Sri Anna Hazare to give up his fast, it was endorsed by leader of the opposition, and every political party consented to it. Just a day before that, all political parties in a meeting, in a short resolution, they requested Sri Anna Hazare to end his fast and also asked the government to take into account and consider the salient points of the John Lokpal bill. All these are in the domain of public knowledge.
I'll come to the all-party resolution in a moment's time. As you know, Anna Hazare's team is publicly claiming that they have met the BJP, they have met the left, and the BJP and the left support them. But I have spoken to the very top leadership of both parties, and they say that in fact Anna's team is watering down its demands, it's amending and changing its position on critical issues. Do you, in the conversations you're having privately with Anna's people, have the same impression that despite what they're saying in public, behind the scenes is Anna and his team climbing down and becoming more reasonable?
I would not like to make any comment on what is going on, because you know, during negotiation we share many views, many points come out, but ultimately the points on which we have convergence, we say that. The point is that Parliament is an open forum. All political parties, either in Parliament or in the Committee of Parliament, will have to give their views
in public,
and it will be recorded.
The problem is this, Minister, can you devise a resolution which Parliament can agree, which will satisfy both Anna and his team as well as the majority of the members of Parliament? Can you create a resolution that will satisfy both when there are clear differences on those 3 sticking points?
No, they want a resolution on these 3 issues. But these resolution meant what? Resolution meant that these 3 issues are to be put in proper law. These are to be enacted. Resolution is the expression of the intention. For instance, Lokayu, they are asking that there should be a common Lokpal which will take care of Lokpal at center and Lokayukt at states. But this is, even Parliament passes a resolution, it is not adequate. It will have to be enacted in the form of a regular legislation.
Which means that actually all this insistence on a resolution is a little mistaken, if not misleading, because after the resolution comes the enactment. The resolution is no commitment of enactment.
No, resolution is commitment, but it will have to be followed by the enactment.
And there can be problems because different parties have different views and you don't have a majority.
No, there what would happen, we can tackle at that stage. But due process of the legislation you cannot bypass. Resolution will be the expression of intention that we will pass this resolution. I will just give you an example. Many years ago I came into Parliament for the first time then, 1969-70. A private member tabled a resolution in Rajya Sabha that privy purse be abolished. It was carried unanimously. Then government said that this resolution is not enough to abolish the privy purse. Due legislation will have to be brought, and everybody agreed. Therefore, it had to be followed by constitution amendment. Similarly, even resolution is passed, say tomorrow or by Monday, after that the legislative process will have to continue.
Except that here they want a resolution about things like Citizens Charter and Lokayukt in the states, and many parties believe that Parliament doesn't have a right in our federal structure to legislate for the states. Parliament creating legislation that affects the Citizens Charter or the Lokayukt would intervene and transgress. Isn't that a problem for you? How do you create a resolution of intent?
No, apart from that, these things are not in secrecy or in confidence. When the discussions with representatives of Sri Anna Hazare were going on in the joint drafting committee, I wrote letters to all 28 chief ministers, posing certain questions where we had the differences with Sri Anna Hazare and his team. One of the questions was that do you want a common Lokpal bill and to convert it into your Lokayukt bill, which will be enacted by the Parliament? Large number of states have stated that they have either they have already their own Lokayukt Act and they will like to stick to it, and quite a few of them stated that we will like to have our own legislation.
Quite right. So, what you are saying in effect is that even a resolution that expresses intent will be difficult to achieve if satisfying Anna and his team is the criteria you have to meet.
No, we can do if they agree. Sometimes we can make a model legislation. Here in this case, we can make a model legislation on the pattern of the Lokpal.
Recommendatory.
If some states desire, they can, no, they will have to pass their act in the state assembly, but they can use that model, and on the same model they can pass their own Lokayukt Act.
This is the way around both the Citizens Charter and the Lokayukt. You can, Parliament can recommend to the states, but the states have a right to refuse.
And the states will have to, even if they agree, they will have to make their own legislation.
But you're still left with the problem of lower bureaucracy, because there the BJP is entirely with you. They believe that lower bureaucracy should not be covered, and I believe even the left parties have argued that the lower bureaucracy should not be covered.
Apart from that, this cannot be dealt merely by the resolution. That is a part of the John Lokpal bill. That John Lokpal bill is being considered by the standing committee. On the basic provisions of the John Lokpal bill, members of the Parliament who are participating in this debate are expected to give their views. I am quite confident that their views will be taken into account by the members of the relevant parliamentary standing committee while formulating their views in the recommendations which they will make for the legislation. So, these issues have to be brought in the form of the legislation.
And not resolution, I agree. You know, Minister, intelligent people who understand Parliament will listen to you and say that actually finding a solution that will satisfy Anna is not going to be easy, because he wants you to pass resolutions that affect matters that are actually in the state domain. He wants you to pass resolutions on subjects where all the political parties disagree with him. So, it is not going to be easy to find a solution. You will struggle.
You know, in our constitution, except Parliament and state assemblies, nobody can legislate. Therefore, this is the area and this is the constitutional scheme. If you are to run administration as per the constitutional provisions, you have no other option.
But in other words, what you are saying is there is a bit of a struggle ahead. You have to find ways of overcoming it.
We are trying our best to convince him, to persuade him that he should give up fast, he should give us more time, because this is not for the first time I am saying. Even during the discussions in the joint drafting committee, I mentioned it umpteen number of times that it will take time, and as Congress party does not have majority of its own, we shall have to carry others with us. Therefore, we can introduce the bill in the monsoon session, but we cannot give you guarantee that the bill will be passed by Parliament in monsoon
The
session.
problem you have, Minister, is that you have a difficult knot to untie, but you have a deadline because Anna Hazare is now into the 11th day of his fast. Tomorrow, Saturday, will be the 12th. At some stage, God forbid, his health will begin to decline sharply. There is a sword hanging over you, but the knot is impossible to untie easily.
No, that's why we are requesting him to end the fast and to allow the process to continue, and Prime Minister has assured that even the work in the standing committee can be fast tracked, but there is a time frame in which we shall have to complete the work.
Do you get the feeling that some of his lieutenants like Arvind Kejriwal and Kiran Bedi are making him intransigent, that they are advising him to take a harder posture?
I would not like to make any comment on that, because after all they are part of the team, so it is for them to, that is their own internal business. We are having interaction with him or with his representatives. We are trying to put our viewpoints, trying to convince them, and we do hope they will recognize these points and they will cooperate and help to ensure that Annaji gives up his fast, as Prime Minister in the very beginning told that his robust health is necessary because he can put in service to the nation for many more years.
Now, Minister, you also mentioned the all-party resolution that was passed on Wednesday. It spoke about a final draft bill. Is this implicit acceptance that the present bill before Parliament will either be at some stage withdrawn, or it will be so extensively amended that what will emerge is in effect a new bill?
Obviously, it will be amended, because when we are saying in the all-party resolutions and when we are saying that all the viewpoints expressed by the members of Parliament while participating in Jan Lokpal and other related matters through a discussion in the Parliament, Parliamentary Standing Committee will have to take into account of these views, and therefore they will make their recommendations, which means amendment of the Lokpal bill, which is under their consideration for the time being.
This is a very important point you're making, which many people may not have appreciated on Wednesday night when the all-party resolution came out. So I'm in a sense underlining it. You're saying to me that in fact the present bill will either be extensively amended, or it's possible that a new bill may replace it at some point of time altogether.
We are not thinking of replacing it by the new bill, because there is scope, then again it will be time consuming.
So this one will be amended.
So it will be better to have amendments the way Parliamentary Standing Committee wants, and after the amendments recommended by them, then again the whole House will get the opportunity to accept those amendments or reject it.
Now, in fact, the all-party resolution also said that due consideration to the Jan Lokpal will be given in devising the final draft bill. Does that mean that substantial sections of the Jan Lokpal bill could be part of the final draft bill?
Already the bill which we have, that's why I was giving you the reference, the bill which we have introduced, which is under consideration of the Parliamentary Standing Committee, contain a large number of provisions of Jan Lokpal bill.
But it now could contain more.
Because it can be more. It would be more.
Substantially more, in fact.
I do not want to qualify whether it will substantially or not, but the fact of the matter is that large number of the provisions of the Lokpal bill which is under consideration of the Parliamentary Standing Committee contain the provisions on which we had agreement.
Are there any elements or sections or clauses of the Jan Lokpal bill which would be absolutely unacceptable to you?
You know what we pointed out, that if you have the structure of a Lokpal which will deal with the corruption aspects in its entirety of the central government from top to down below, cabinet secretary to a railway gangman or to a postal peon who delivers a letter, it would be very difficult to manage. There is a question of practicability. When you enact a law, it must be practical, it must be implementable.
Quite right.
Therefore, we suggested that if you could implement the provisions of the Lokpal, which is very powerful organization, which is independent, whose expenditure will not be voted by Parliament, but will be charged. Therefore, let them concentrate on important cases, but the other cases can be dealt by the CBC.
Quite right. If I understand you correctly, size and practicality is your concern, which also suggests that incorporating the lower bureaucracy is one element of the Jan Lokpal that you will find difficult to accept, because then the Lokpal will become too big, too unwieldy.
And apart from that, Lokpal, as per our concept and which has been stated in the legislation also, is a quasi-judicial body. Now, how Supreme Court functions? Supreme Court functions as one member of the bench, 2 members, 3 members of the bench. They
represent the full.
Yeah. But here, when you are discussing the corruption, you will have to delegate this authority to the series of officers you are going to appoint.
That also is not acceptable to you.
No, that is difficult. The point which I am talking of is very difficult. There is no guarantee. People will not come from heaven. The sources from where you recruit, civil servants are recruited, government officials are recruited, state government or central government officers, the same sources, people will be recruited. But if you have enormous power without any check,
they can be misused.
It would be, instead of, no, apart from the impracticability of implementation, it would create a situation where it would be extremely difficult that the very purpose may be lost.
Absolutely. This is a second area where a clause of the Jan Lokpal bill would not be acceptable. Let me end by putting this to you. You've explained in considerable detail the government's position, how you are going to tackle the difficult problem of creating a resolution that will satisfy Anna Hazare, the areas where you have serious differences that you cannot resolve over the Jan Lokpal bill. At the end of it all, the problem is that many people in the country say, today the impression is that the government's on the back foot and defeated, Anna is victorious. Does that worry you that 2.5 years into your term, people are calling this a defeated government?
No, that a elected government in our system, elected by the people, sometimes there may be that some of the actions of the government may not be liked by people, government will have to correct. Sometimes people will appreciate the action of the government, it is nothing new. Therefore, I am not unnecessarily worried over it. But I am seriously worried over the health of Sri Anna Hazare and the current agitation which is going on, which is not good for the country, it is not good for anybody.
Are you scared that if this continues, it could spiral out of control?
Spiral?
Out of control?
No government can allow it to go out of control, but I do hope good sense will prevail, not only on those who are agitating, but the larger sections of the society which will exercise its moderating influence over them.
Because the risk of something awry happening is always there.
Of course it is there.
One last question. Do you think with hindsight, this whole situation should have been handled differently? Were mistakes made in trying to put conditions on his rally, or in arresting him, or sending him to Tihar jail, which many thought was offensive?
No, I do not think that like that, because if somebody is decided to pursue a particular course of action, it is not easy. In order to arrive at a solution, that's why I said during his first agitation, we immediately offered to him whatever he wanted. But what somebody wants which is not feasible, then how could you solve the problem?
But do you think the arrest, the detention, sending to Tihar?
No, I am not going to make any comment on that. In course of tackling the situation, various steps are to be taken. There was no intention of keeping him under detention. Intention was to persuade him and to see that there is no serious law and order situation.
That I understand.
Those who are the law enforcing machineries, it is their judgment. They will have to see that whether a particular event may lead to the breakdown of law and order. Therefore, let us not bring those extraneous issues. We are talking on parliament, we are talking on the legislations.
Last question. Do you think the credibility and authority of the government, and perhaps in particular the image and standing of the Prime Minister, have suffered in the last 10, 12 days?
I do not think so.
At all?
Now, that is for the people at large to judge. But the fact of the matter is, what is reasonable, what is proper, government is doing it from day one, from the month of April, May, June, July, August till today, government is acting judiciously, trying to reach Sri Anna Hazare with the rational approach and trying to convince him and his colleagues.
So there are no second thoughts, no regrets in the way this has been
Why
handled?
are you bringing these extraneous issues? What is the question of regret? We are explaining the situation. I am not sitting on a value judgment. I leave it to you. That is your job, not my job.
Are you worried that Anna may have set a precedent and you may have now more such protests, more such rallies, more occasions where hundreds of thousands or 20,000, 30,000?
In a democratic country, protest is the right guaranteed by the Constitution, provided it does not lead to the breakdown of law and order. So protest is nothing new.
Minister, a pleasure talking to you.